Hey, what's up? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Jim Gaffigan back here with us. Part 2, you're here in September for American Dreamer.
It's no getting rid
here
of me.
with another new movie, Troop Zero.
Troop Zero.
What's up, man? How are you?
How you
Happy
doing?
New Year.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. So why don't we talk about this? Because you got a crazy accent here, got
Yeah.
a bunch of kids running around.
Yes.
How'd you get involved with this project?
I was sent the script. I mean, imagine being sent a script where two of the lead actors are Viola Davis and Allison Janney,
Yeah, not a bad deal.
who have won every single type of acting award you can win.
Yeah.
And Mike Epps is great. He was added later on. But you read the story in the script, and it's what I really responded to was that it was kind of this old school kind of underdog story that I remember the Bad News Bears as a kid.
Classic,
and but I also was drawn to the fact that it's, I remember making this movie and thinking, wow, this is really kind of a movie that looks at class as opposed to, I mean, America, the great sin of America is slavery, but this one takes a look at class as opposed to, there's obviously different races in it, but that's not the focus of this. The focus is class, and that's even what Christmas, who plays my daughter, she's dealing with class. And some of it is presented in a kind of like, embrace your oddball, be who you are, I'm a human being, stuff like that. But for the nerdy part of me, it was an interesting commentary on class.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because you think in like this little specific area of Georgia that everybody's kind of lumped into the same group, and in truth, they're not. Like,
Right.
there are differences, and classism is a big problem in this country, and something that we don't talk about enough. So,
Yeah.
what was kind of most fascinating for you in unpacking that throughout the movie?
Well, I think it's just, there is, we know culturally there are cultures throughout the world that, whether it be the caste system or the, the British, class system, that, Americans have this romantic notion that that doesn't exist. Intellectually, we know it does, but for a glimpse at that and to see what the restrictions are of that, and also how maybe in America you can buck that and kind of be whoever you want, which is truly an American romantic idea. You can be anything.
Yeah.
Christmas Flint could be a birdie.
Sure.
She could talk to people from outer space. It's a very romantic pie in the sky idea, but that's kind of fun. And as a parent of way too many children, I want my kids to see this movie.
Have they checked out your stuff recently? Are they in on your stuff?
They haven't seen. There was. I did American Dreamer where they didn't watch that. And
Too dark for them. They're like, no, Dad, I'm out.
And then, being frank, I think my now 14-year-old son walked out. He's like, I don't want to see this.
Why did he walk out?
Well, they were watching it at home. I think I was out of town. And he was like, what if this is true? What if Dad does have it? Because I played a guy with two families.
Oh,
I'm like,
man.
and he probably wanted to get back on his Xbox anyway. But he was like, what? I don't want to watch this. What if he does have another family? And I'm like, obviously I don't. But
do your kids think you're funny?
It varies. I think yes, but maybe I'm a cynic. I assume I'll lose all of them eventually.
At some point, yeah. Just the natural progression of things.
The natural progression is you're not funny. You're annoying.
Your dad, yeah.
Initially, you might be amusing, and then you're just embarrassing. So eventually, I'll lose them all.
Now, on the flip side, are your kids funny? Like, have they picked up some stuff from you and your wife?
They are individually funny.
Okay, that's a good thing.
And some of it's intentional funny, and some of it is not intentional, which is really interesting. And being a comedian, I think that there is this tendency to and my wife's a comedy writer, that there is this unconscious message that's been delivered that humor is funny. I mean, humor is important. It's an important form of currency. So at the dinner table, I'm like, we can just eat. You don't have to try and be funny.
You don't have to one-up each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do your own thing.
Yeah.
So you've been doing the acting thing for a while. When you think about doing a movie like this, like if I were to tell you 10 years ago you'd be playing this type of character, like what would you have said to me?
Oh, I mean, I would have been so excited. I mean, that's, you know, for me, I've been kicking around for a while. I know that I look like I'm in my early 20s, but I'm not. But for, you know, meaty roles where I play a guy who walks around with a toothbrush in his mouth and has a deep Southern Georgia drawl.
Talking about Johnny Cash.
Yeah. It's like, I always wanted to play these complex guy who, you know, wants to be a good dad, but really isn't. You know, it's just about the opportunity. And it's very strange as a comedian because with stand-up, you have a certain level of control. Mm-hmm. Like you can come up with an idea and try it that night. Whereas in acting, even if you prove you can act, you have to be the right person for the right role.
Right.
And you obviously respect the vision of the writer and the directors. So you hope that people will hire you, but there's not much you can do.
Yeah. Even when you're doing a special, like you'll do it 1 or 2 times, you'll take the best clips from that, you control that. When you're on the set, like you may do something 5, 6, 7 times, you may think the first 3 were great, and maybe they take one of the last 2, and you just have to deal with that.
Absolutely, and there is something about really letting go with the end product but I've learned that for, you know, I've had bits and pieces and different size roles for a couple decades now, but it is something I'm more used to now, where it's like, you know, I don't have any control over this. But it's nice, you know, like I feel as though there's a nervousness about watching a movie for the first time that you're in. Some of it is, am I going to be horrible or noticeably horrible, or and is the movie are they going to do what I thought they would do with it?
Right.
And so what I was really excited about Troop Zero is that it was the directors, Bert and Bertie, really have pulled together a nice combination of humor and whimsy and also some grounded kind of sensitivity to a message that is captured in the movie, which is nice. I mean, selfishly as an actor, I want to show that I can, you know, do different moments, but also it's, you know, I did this interview with these 2 guys from a sports radio thing, and one of the guys was like, I cried at the end, and I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I just started crying. And I was like, that's very interesting. He goes, don't tell anyone. I'm like, I think we're on the radio.
You're like,
right
I'm going to tell everybody I know, actually. That's the thing, you never know how people are going to react.
Right.
Yeah, could be anybody. How about with the comedy? You're going back on tour. When you think about your comedic chops, like what keeps pushing you? Because you've done the specials, you've toured, like what still drives you with the comedy?
Oh, it's, you know, I feel with comedy, I keep getting better at it. And stand-up is so constructed on self-assignment that, you know, you could say you're done when you've done a couple specials. You know, 2 decades ago, if you did 1 special, you could say you were done.
That was a big deal, yeah.
But for me, it's different kind of accomplishments, and also, you know, there's something so oddly rewarding about coming up with a new joke. And so as I start to do more and more international shows and get exposed to different cultures, it serves as a, you know, it rejuvenates my, you know, the topics that I can discuss. You know, performing in Spain or in, you know, Mexico or even Russia, it's, you not only do you get a reflection of a different culture that might be completely different from ours, but also it holds up a mirror to our culture and to my specific belief system. So, you know, point of view is very important in comedy, but also you know, you check in on your point of view, and you also change. You know, whereas in my case, I get fatter.
What's a specific example of you getting better? Like, can you pinpoint something from the last couple of years where it's like, I was here, and now I've elevated myself to the next level?
Well, I have some perspective on, for me, on my, there's the skill set of writing a joke or building off of an observation, and that kind of fed by a point of view. But storytelling, which I've done in small samples, not, you know, the specials are still kind of constructed on jokes, but storytelling about, you know, my appendix being, you know, being removed or performing in front of the Pope, the storytelling skill is something that was something I did in everyday life, but I didn't always do in stand-up. So that's something that's evolving. And I think, you know, even my first couple specials were primarily me discussing food. And so now it's, you know, with my wife's brain tumor, I discussed a whole different thing there. And as I do international shows, it's much more of understanding America or you know, just the human reality of things and how absurd things are. But it's interesting, there's doors that open along the way. You know, I performed in Spain, and I had these jokes about bullfighting and running with the bulls, and then that opened this door to talking about bull riding and rodeos.
And you didn't expect to go there.
I didn't know that, and I had performed at a rodeo a year ago, but I didn't expect that to open a door there. So it's weird. It sounds, you never know what you know, a creative idea will lead to another creative idea. Like, the veins are not logical. It's not like, I'm talking about my kids, so therefore I will talk about my childhood. It's like, my kids like superheroes. That, you know, it can take a strange leap.
Yeah, but then when it gets to that point, it's pretty cool when it all comes together.
It's very cool.
That's awesome. So thinking about your career, like you mentioned, you've done all these different things. Like, what is the motivation in not only being a comedian, but also going out on the road and doing films, and also being on CBS This Morning and doing commentary? Like, what are the motivation points there in terms of giving yourself that whole range?
You know, I would say the unifying thing for all of those is a sense of creative fulfillment. And, you know, I think through my 20s and 30s, I was so motivated by ego or seeking the approval of the hierarchy in the entertainment industry. And now I'm much more rewarded by even a CBS Sunday commentary, which is imperfect. Like, I think in the past I would have been like, this isn't a perfect commentary or a 300-word essay on the, you know, the ending of the year 2020. But now I'm kind of like, I'm moving along. This is a snapshot. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's which in some ways is, you know, it's, you gotta, you know, that's another creative lesson. It's like, I remember hearing about some Nobel poet laureate who writes every day, and he says, someone asked, how do you deal with writer's block? And he said, I lower my standards. So it's like, you don't have to publish everything you write. You just have to continue to write.
Right.
So for me, the CBS Sunday commentaries are not the most brilliant thing I've come up with, but they capture you know, a raw emotion of something I feel about a certain topic, and it makes people angry, which I like.
And you're flexing a different muscle also.
Yeah.
And you can keep that going. And guess what?
Yeah.
You may do a better one the next time, or it just fulfills you in a different way, and that's totally cool also.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So in addition to all the other things we talked about, how about when you did your own show? Like, when you think back to that, I mean, it's a few years ago at this point now.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that, and how would you do things differently if you did it in 2020?
I think the show which I did, you know, with my wife, and it was probably the culmination of our partnership.
I bet, yeah.
Where she was the showrunner. We wrote all the episodes together, sometimes with friends' help, and sometimes, and she would direct some. And you know, if we weren't parent of 5 children, I would probably have a different approach to it. But I also feel as though the commitment of being an executive producer and writer and lead actor of a show is like, it seems unnecessary. Do you know what I mean?
It's a lot, yeah.
It's just like, I love, you know, in Troop Zero being the hired gun, and
right.
that
you
I
pop
can
on, people are controlling, pulling the strings, and you can do your thing.
Yeah, and you know, I like, you know, but having done the Jim Gaffigan Show was so important for me to learn, you know, how to be a good soldier. I don't think I was a bad soldier before, but to show up and understand what the executive producers are dealing with, what the writers have an expectation for, what the director is dealing with. Because being on the other side of that window, you can understand how you can be the best team player, where, you know, you're going to show up, you're going to add value, you're going to pitch ideas. If they don't take your ideas, you're going to be the good soldier and go along. Whereas when I was on the other side, I was baffled by some of the problems that would come up.
Like what? What would come up?
Well, it was just like, you know, creative performers can be complex.
Yeah.
And they can be neurotic, and you know, they're not doing it just to be difficult, but it's not necessarily constructive. And again, I don't think I was necessarily a difficult person, but I think being an executive producer of a show where I was, you know, co-wrote every episode, I have a deep understanding of what's expected of an actor or a partner in a show or a movie that I didn't have before.
I gotcha. Let's bring it back home to the movie here. When people check this out, what are some big things you want them to take away?
I think that, you know, what I love about a good movie is that it'll bring up conversation. So whether it's a look at nostalgia, you know, embracing your individuality, or even like a simple discussion of class like we talked about. And, you know, you know, McKenna Grace is so great. All these kids are so good in this movie. But there is something about when you get really good child actors that they make you think about your own childhood. That's pretty special. So I think that watching this, and granted, I was this age when, you know, I was their age in this time period, so it holds that meaning too, but it kind of brings you back to a timeless time when we were kids, you know, and you feel that way when you read, like, Tom Sawyer, or,
it puts you right back in there being a kid,
you
where
know,
you're at.
it's like, and, you know, and I'm sure that's some of the success of Little Women, you know, is that it's not only them portraying young people, it's also, you remember watching a version of that or reading that book. So it's fun.
Yeah, that's the power of art.
Yes.
Awesome. Jim, really
Thank
great
you.
to have you back.
Appreciate it.
Check this guy out, January 17th. That's a big day.
Thanks so much.
All right, cool. For Jim, I'm DJ. See you next time here on The Sit Down.